Hey, hey, Blue Table fans. Today we are going to talk about one of the most interesting and changed aspects of Warhammer 40k 6th edition, which is transport vehicles. Now, before we start in on that, we have to get some terminology down. A vehicle can only move at 3 different speeds. The first one is stationary. Stationary means you don't move at all. There you go, that's stationary. I didn't move at all. You can pivot around the center, so this vehicle is still stationary even though it's moving around like this. The second speed is what's called combat speed, and that is up to 6 inches. So if you move like this, 6 inches, that is combat speed. The third type of movement is called cruising speed, and that is over 6 inches and up to 12 inches. So a rhino moving at cruising speed would move 12 inches, or if it moved 6 1/100th of an inch, that is now cruising speed. Also, just a quick tip, make sure that people that you play against aren't doing what I call jumping, which is they say, okay, my tank is going to move 6 inches, so there's 6 inches, and they go like this. They actually move it over, like a leapfrog, over the 6 inches. And that ain't no 6 inches, that's more like 11 inches of movement. So you have to be careful of that. Okay, so here it is again. Stationary, stationary. Combat speed, cruising speed. Stationary, combat, cruising. Now, a fast vehicle, you would think that a fast vehicle, like an Eldar Wave Serpent here, would actually go faster, and it does not. The Wave Serpent still is subject to the exact same limitations of stationary, up to 6 inches for combat, and up to 12 inches for cruising speed. They do have other advantages, though, and that has to do with what's called moving flat out. And by the way, in case anyone's wondering, I have the rule book right here, and I'm being as careful as I possibly can to give you the correct information. Here's where the difference comes in, is that a vehicle can effectively run nowadays. It can, instead of firing in the shooting phase, it can move an additional 6 inches. So a rhino can conceivably move cruising speed and an additional 6 inches for a total of an 18-inch move. A skimmer, a fast vehicle, I didn't just say skimmer, that's different. A skimmer can move 12 inches for, I gotta, to demonstrate this in the camera's angle, I am going to have to really pull that out. It can move cruising speed of 12 and then move, whoosh, an additional 12 inches for flat out. And that is similar to the last edition, but here's what's different, is that if a vehicle is fast and a skimmer, it can now move 12 inches for its regular move, and it can move 18 inches for flat out, for a total of a 30-inch movement for a fast skimmer. But that's if it doesn't shoot at all. Alright, we are on to the transport section, and there's quite a bit of rules for transports. I'm going to try and give you an easily digestible auditory form for those. First off, a transport has a transport capacity. For example, a rhino has 10. A Wave Serpent has a transport capacity of 12, and a Land Raider Crusader has a transport capacity of 15, was it? 15. Oh, 16. Okay, my bad. Alright, first off, they can carry infantry and independent characters as long as they are also infantry. So this rhino, guess what? It could carry this combat squad of 5 plus 2 independent characters. Now, sometimes additional models can embark on a transport, but there has to be a rule that specifically allows it. So, for example, in the Eldar book, Wraithguard are counted as 2 passengers, and there's a 5 Wraithguard limit for a Wave Serpent. Any models that are embarked on a transport, that means they're actually inside of it, not in real life, in the game world, wouldn't that be inconvenient? They are considered to be fearless. Okay, next item for transports is what's called fire points, and you'll find that in the rulebook. So, for example, Space Marine rulebook, you go to the Rhino section, up, down here it says fire points. 2 models can fire from the Rhino's top hatch, right there. And Razorback, fire points, none. Also, an Eldar Wave Serpent has no fire points either. But unless it's specified, only 1 model can shoot out of a fire point. So, for example, if a Rhino, up to 2 guys could shoot out of this top hatch. Now, as far as measuring range, I'm really not sure. I'd imagine you'd go from the edge of the hatch if it mattered. So if a guy with a melt-a-gun popped up and attempted to shoot, would this be 12 inches, or would it be from the middle of the hatch? I'm not completely certain. All the rulebook says is that ranges are measured from the fire point itself. So if an opponent says, hey, I shoot my melt-a-gun at your Wave Serpent, let's say this is the shot, let's say it's from the rear. And he says, okay, well, it looks like I'm within 6 inches, so that'll be plus 2d6 for armor penetration. Oh, I don't think so, because guess what? It's done from the fire point, which would actually be more like 7.5 inches away in this case. So knowing the rules can really help you in situations like that. However, now, let's say our combat squad here, instead of a melt-a-gun, has a flamer. So the flamer shoots from the access point like that. Now, herein lay the problem. Does the flamer actually hit the Rhino itself? The answer is no, say the rules. It says to transfer for, let's see here. We assume the weapon has been fired in a sufficient arc to clear the transport's hull. Also, of important note is that the passengers can shoot at a different angle than the rest of the unit inside. So, for example, if these guys were embarked on the Rhino, and let's say further that they had a melt-a-gun that they wanted to shoot here, well, the bolter, the storm bolter on the Rhino could actually shoot at a different target. Okay, let's assume this is our combat squad on our Rhino, and let's put forth a couple of scenarios. Here we have a las cannon, so I've switched it up a little bit. We got some bolters, and we have a veteran with a bolt pistol. I still think he gets a bolter. I'm not really sure on that. So let's say these guys are embarked on the Rhino, and let's say the Rhino moves at combat speed, which is up to 6 inches. Now remember, combat speed, cruising speed, let's pull that out a little bit. Combat speed, cruising speed, and stationary are the same for all vehicles. It doesn't matter if they are fast or not. Fast and skimmer only allows you to move more if you're moving flat out. So, if this moves, guess what? These guys count as having moved as well. And that means this las cannon, if I want to pop up the las cannon and a bolter guy, they can only shoot snapshots. Excuse me, the bolter guy can shoot normally, and the las cannon can only shoot snapshots because it's a heavy weapon. If they move cruising speed, the 2 guys can only fire snapshots, which is just like the vehicle. Also, it says they cannot fire if the vehicle moves flat out or uses smoke launchers that turn. So be careful of that. Don't let your opponent say, you know, okay, I'm gonna. Let's say it's a Space Marine shooting phase, and your opponent has these guys embarked on there. So we'll just imagine that. So don't let your opponent say, okay, I move flat out 6 inches, and then come back to that and say, okay, and now I'm going to shoot the guys inside of it. So, and then he'll be like, okay, these guys pop out and they're shooting now. No, they're not shooting now, because transport has embarked models Those models cannot shoot if they go flat out or the vehicle fires smoke launchers that turn, which is an odd sort of clarification. And by the way, I'm not making this stuff up. I'm looking in here and spoon feeding you these details, and at the same time teaching myself how to play this game. Is anybody else in here getting anything from this?
Yes, John!
Yay! Isn't it great? Oh, you guys are so great. Alright, so let's move on to what transports are really about, which is access points. So each vehicle has a number of access points defined in its entry. These are ramps, hatches, doors, and whatnot. Most of them are pretty obvious on the vehicle. Like if you look at a Rhino, you'll see it's got little doors on the side, it's got a little ramp thing that supposedly comes down in the back, and then in the front it has nothing. But in case that's not clear from looking at the vehicle, in fact, let's look at a Land Raider. So isn't this interesting? When you put your Land Raider together, you can put the weapons in the front or in the back. So, wow, okay, which way do you want it to be? So you do get a little tactical leeway when you're actually putting your model together. It has an assault ramp on the top. By the way, all these models here are currently for sale. You might want to look those up. There's a whole Ultramarines army that is for sale. So it's got another access hatch back here. So, you know, you actually gain a good couple inches on your range by putting the guns up front, but your guys will be a little bit farther behind if they disembark there. Quite frankly, you're better off going out of here. We are going to talk about assault vehicles. Those are vehicles where you can get out and charge in the same turn. So you may have to look at your rule book. Here in the Space Marine book, it talks about dedicated transports, but guess what? It talks about transport capacity, but not where the access points are. For that, you actually have to go back into the book, to the descriptions. See if I can find it really quick. Otherwise, I'll be a little bit embarrassed, I guess. Nope, I went too far. And here we go. And by the way, this is such poor design for this. Sorry, I don't mean to be critical, but heavens to Betsy, they're not even in alphabetical order. Here we go, access points. Let's look at the Rhino. Access points for Rhino. Rhinos have one access point on each side of the hull and one at the rear, which we actually found out by looking at it. So let's talk about embarking and disembarking. Embarking means to get on something. Disembarking means to get off. Now, to embark on a vehicle, look inside the rule book here, the access points actually go out a certain radius. And if you look at the picture really carefully, it's ever so clear. So you have to only move within 2 inches of the access point, and you measure, as far as I can tell, you measure actually from the very edge, not the middle. So 2 inches out would be measured like that. And so it creates what I'm going to term a scoop bubble for models that wish to embark. Alright, so let's talk about embarkation. So 2 inches from every single, what is it called, access point. There's what I'm calling the slurp bubble. So basically, let's say these Marines here want to get on this Rhino, so they just move within 2 inches of the access thing, the access point. And if I'm reading it right, it's actually 2 inches. So this is 2 inches right here. In fact, hold on a second. That's where you want your handy-dandy BTP measure. So this is 2 inches exactly there. So you go like this. And so if it touched, that would actually be within 2 inches and could get slurped up. If you look at the rule book, you see that there is one model that isn't quite completely inside the bubble. So that's how I'm reading it. So basically, you just move them on up, and if they're within 2 inches, and the whole unit has to get within 2 inches, and they actually get on there. Now, I don't know if they all have to be done at the same time. So let's say this were a 10-man unit, and they could all get within 2 inches, but they couldn't do it at the same time, because a unit has to embark entirely at the same time. If there's one guy who's like a straggler, then the unit, none of them can get on the transport. They all have to stay outside. So once a unit's embarked, you take them off the table. You just make a note, or I guess remember which unit is inside the transport. Also as a note, once a unit's embarked, you measure from the hull for everything except shooting. So I guess if a unit, say, had some sort of psychic ability in a radius, you would measure that from the hull of the vehicle. Now, if these guys move up and embark and the vehicle hasn't moved yet, then the vehicle can then move. The question is, could it move flat out? Okay, so basically, if guys embark on a vehicle and the vehicle hasn't moved yet, it then can move. And the way I'm reading it, it can still move flat out. However, if the vehicle moved before the guys got on it, if it moved at all, including pivoting, the rule book says. So if you turn like this and guys run over and get on board, this vehicle can't move. It has to have been completely 100% stationary and not have moved at all, including pivoting, in order to be able to move after the guys have got on there, after they have embarked. Also, as a side note, you cannot ram or do tank shock when units embark on a vehicle. Okay, so let's say this Rhino here has some models on it already. So here's my embarked unit. They can now disembark. So you can't embark and disembark the same turn. And so here's the limitation. If a vehicle can't move more than 6 inches and then disembark. So and it says can disembark either before or after the vehicle has moved, including pivoting on the spot, so long as the vehicle has not moved more than 6 inches. If a vehicle had not moved before the unit disembarked, the vehicle can then move normally. If the vehicle had already moved before the unit disembarked, the vehicle cannot move further, pivoting on the spot. What that means is, if a vehicle hasn't done anything, then a unit can disembark and the vehicle can just go do its own merry thing. Or a unit can only disembark if this has gone 6 inches or less. So let me show you how that works. This unit so this Rhino could move 6 inches and even turn, because that's a legitimate part of the movement. So these guys could get out of the rear. And let me show you what a disembarkation looks like, because it's done in a very specific way, and this is extremely important that you do it in the correct manner. This is under placing disembarked models here at the bottom of the page. So when a unit disembarks, place the models one at a time using the following method. Place the model first in base contact with one of the vehicle's access points. So you go like that. So I guess in contact could be theoretically right at the edge. If the model cannot be placed in base contact due to the vehicle's flying base, place it so that its body is in contact with the access point. So this is an interesting item that I want to actually illustrate. Okay, so let's take a Storm Raven, for example. If this unit was disembarking from a Storm Raven, well, you couldn't very well put the guys in base contact here and then have them, drop out. They actually disembark from the base of the vehicle. All right, so you can't disembark within 1 inch of an enemy model or within impassable terrain. So if this Rhino moves up and these guys are right here, they cannot get out of that, because when they pop out, they will be within 1 inch. In fact, even guys backed up a little bit, that is still within 1 inch. And by the way, that's where this thing is incredibly handy. You notice it has this curve here? That's to get around figures so you can test that 1 inch. So, all right, let's get rid of these orc boys. But a typical deployment won't have such problems. But boy, miniatures battles really is about the exceptions. So basically, you take the guys one at a time, and you place them in contact with an access point. We were doing this out of the rear. And now this is interesting. They don't make a 6 inch move. They have to make a normal move but must end the move wholly within 6 inches of the access point of the thing that it disembarked from. So this is an extremely important note. So again, that's why these measuring templates are so awesome. This is 6 inches right here. So the guy doesn't move 6 inches, which would be like this. He instead has to be placed wholly within 6 inches. Now, this is important because if you look at our Land Raider here with an assault ramp, so you got to watch your opponent what he's doing. He can't say, okay, I disembark my Terminators and I move them 6 inches. Guess what? Illegal move. And here's why. Because they have to be wholly within 6 inches. That is not wholly within 6 inches. It is actually out. So there's a radius, because otherwise the Terminators would actually get a 40 millimeter jump, which is slightly more of a jump than if you look at a regular base. He would get that much more out of it. So mathematically, there's only so far guys can get and then get out of a transport. It's actually 12 inches. So even with a front access ramp, you can only move the vehicle 6 inches maximum, and then disembark your guys 6 inches. So they cannot ever gain more than a 12-inch advantage by definition. So basically, to continue, guys, it's taken a long time to show you the most basic thing. So there's like a radius. So basically, you wouldn't individually move each one of them. You just stick them all inside of that disembarkation bubble within coherency of each other. Okay, so after disembarking, models can shoot, counting as having moved, or choose to run in their subsequent shooting phase, but cannot declare charge in their subsequent assault phase. There is an exception. There are what are called assault vehicles, and it's a special rule. It basically means you can charge after disembarking. Open-topped vehicles have that, so Dark Eldar flyers, Orc trucks, those types of things, and notably the Land Raider guys can get out, and then these Terminators could assault. And as you know, assault is 2d 6 inches. So if you do the math on it, the Land Raider can move 6, the guys can get out 6, and then you can assault 2d 6, which is an average of 7 inches. So you end up really with a net threat range. And by the way, with pre-measure, you can really figure this stuff out. You have a net threat range of 12 plus 7 inches is 19 inches, but that's only average. You could, theoretically, if you rolled boxcars, which is highly unlikely, you could actually have an assault range of 24 inches. Okay, now here's an important rule, and you've got to read it exactly word for word to make any sense of it. This is called emergency disembarkation, and here's the picture for that. That's what it looks like. It says, if any models cannot disembark because of enemies or because they would end up in impassable terrain. So note it says models there. So that means, for example, and I don't know how this would look, so let's say these cargo containers were here, and there were these orc boys, right? So, and this rhino just basically moved in backwards, I guess. Really, just bear with me here. So they can't disembark, this impassable terrain. Actually, this isn't impassable, but just pretend with me here. They can make, if any model can't get out, they can make what's called an emergency disembarkation. So, and that is actually, a model can be placed anywhere in contact with the vehicle's hull, can then move as for normal disembarkation. The unit can then perform any voluntary actions for the rest of the turn. If even this disembarkation is impossible because it's impossible to place one or more models, then the unit can't disembark. So basically, they've made it so really you can get out of transports. And you know what? This rule's a little fiddly for me. It seems very specific to situations. There used to be a thing where you could actually block people in and destroy the unit. And I don't think that's the case anymore. Okay, another note here, let's go ahead and clean this up, is about independent characters in transports. So let's say this combat squad moves up, it gets into the slurp bubble, which is within 2 inches, and if I'm reading it right, you can actually have a 2-inch space and still get slurped up. So how far away could you be? You could you could go 6 inches, and then be with, as long as you're within 8 inches on the net of the access point, you actually can get on. So these guys get on, and then let's say I go ahead and move my chaplain and he gets onto the vehicle, and then I move my Space Marine captain and he gets into the vehicle. Independent characters that are embarked on the same vehicle are automatically joined, just as if the independent character were within 2 inches of the unit. They can disembark as a single unit, and they can separate while disembarking. While the others remain, they can separate. So these independent characters are joined to this unit, but guess what? They could actually get out as independent units. They're on disembarkation. They can even separate by disembarking at the same time, so long as they end their move more than 2 inches away from each other. So I guess that has to do with independent characters, doesn't it? And I think we've covered a lot. I hope you've got... oh my gosh, there's even more. Hold on just a minute. Oh, here's an incredibly interesting rule. Check this out. Let's say this unit is embarked on this vehicle. And so we've got a las cannon and these guys there. If a unit charges the transport, so let's say these burner boys decide this rhino is really too much for them to live with. Hold on, sorry for my horrible cinematography here. So let's say these burner boys charge this rhino here. Guess who gets to fire OverWatch at them? Actually, OverWatch is done before they move. So the boys would say, hey, we're charging this rhino, and the Space Marine player says, yeah, hold on a tick. 2 guys are going to pop out of the hatch and shoot at you. It's going to be the las cannon and let's say there's a melt-a-gun. So here you go, las cannon miss, melt-a-gun miss. And they would, of course, need 6s to hit there. Okay, I'm not going to do this in this video, but when a vehicle is wrecked, stunned, shaken, or explodes, or has, that can have an effect on the passengers. Weapon destroyed and immobilized obviously have no effect, other than that the vehicle can't move. And I think that's it for the rules on transports. I hope it's been illuminating. The important thing to note is the assault special rule, which is something that open-topped vehicles have. And that, let me just read it. Assault vehicle is a special rule, not assault. Assault vehicle is passengers disembarking from access points on a vehicle with this special rule can charge in the turn they do so, even on a turn that the vehicle was destroyed. Wow. All right. So that makes open-topped a big deal.